The spark that lit the world. Imagine a time when the world was divided, when Europe was sinking into what later came to be called the Dark Ages. Libraries were crumbling, art was fading, and the light of scientific curiosity was dimming. But far to the east, in the heart of the Islamic world, a new light began to shine. A light so bright that it would illuminate the path of human knowledge for centuries to come. This was the Golden Age of Islam, a period that began in the 8th century and lasted well into the 14th century. It was an era when scholars, scientists, and thinkers from across the Muslim world, from Spain to Persia, from Cairo to Samarkand, turned cities into centers of knowledge and learning. The birth of a civilization of knowledge. It all began with a simple yet revolutionary idea deeply rooted in the teachings of Islam. Seek knowledge even if you have to go as far as China. This saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, inspired generations of Muslims to pursue knowledge as a form of worship, an act that brought them closer to understanding God's creation. Unlike many civilizations that separated faith and science, Muslims saw them as two sides of the same coin. Under the early Abbasid caliphs, especially Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Mamun, the city of Baghdad became the beating heart of intellectual progress. Founded in 762 CE, Baghdad wasn't just a political capital, it became the intellectual capital of the world. The House of Wisdom, Bayt al-Hikmah. At the center of this movement stood a remarkable institution, Bayt al-Hikmah, or the House of Wisdom. Established by Caliph al-Mamun in the early 9th century, it served as a library, a translation bureau, and a university, all in one. Here, scholars from Arabia, Persia, India, Greece, and China worked side by side, translating, debating, and experimenting. Greek texts of Aristotle, Plato, Hippocrates, and Ptolemy were translated into Arabic, while Indian works on mathematics and astronomy were studied and expanded upon. But Muslims didn't just preserve knowledge, they built upon it, corrected it, and made it their own. Imagine walking through the halls of Bayt al-Hikmah, scrolls piled high, scholars murmuring in Arabic, Persian, and Greek, instruments for astronomy gleaming under the oil lamps, and young students copying diagrams of the stars, anatomy, and algebraic equations. Why this era was different? What made this golden age truly unique was its openness to ideas. Muslim rulers valued knowledge from any source, whether it came from pagan Greece, Hindu India, or Christian Byzantium. The guiding principle was simple. Wisdom belongs to the believer, wherever he finds it. And this spirit of intellectual curiosity changed the world. From medicine to mathematics, astronomy to architecture, philosophy to poetry, the Islamic world became the bridge between the ancient and the modern. The discoveries made in Baghdad, Cordoba, Damascus, and Cairo would one day spark the European Renaissance. A world connected by knowledge. Unlike Europe, which was fragmented into feudal kingdoms, the Islamic world was connected by language, Arabic, faith, Islam, and trade. Caravans carried not only silk and spices, but also books and ideas, from the libraries of Baghdad to the universities of Spain. Scholars traveled freely across borders, from Persia to North Africa, from Egypt to Andalusia, carrying their manuscripts and instruments wherever they went. This global network of knowledge made possible something the world had never seen before: a unified intellectual civilization where the pursuit of knowledge transcended race, geography, and religion. The role of translation. Translation played a vital role in shaping this era. Caliph al-Ma'mun personally sponsored translators and paid them their weight in gold, literally. The more complex the manuscript, the higher the reward. Through translation, Muslim scholars didn't just transfer Greek science and philosophy, they transformed it. They added commentary, conducted experiments, and developed new theories. It was this creative engagement, not blind copying, that made Islamic science so revolutionary. Setting the stage for great minds. By the 10th century, the foundations were laid for the rise of some of history's greatest minds: Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra; Ibn Sina, Avicenna, the pioneer of medicine; and Al-Hazen, the founder of modern optics, and countless others whose work would influence Europe for centuries to come. The Golden Age was more than just an era. It was a movement of the mind, a time when faith inspired reason and curiosity became a sacred duty. And while Europe slept, the Muslim world dreamed and built a civilization that shaped our modern world in ways we are only beginning to rediscover.
The age of scholars and scientists. As the world outside struggled with war, superstition, and ignorance, the cities of the Islamic world glowed with a different light, the light of knowledge. From Baghdad to Cordoba, Cairo to Samarkand, something extraordinary was happening. Scholars, physicians, astronomers, and mathematicians were rewriting humanity's understanding of the universe. It was not just an age of faith, it was an age of reason, inquiry, and innovation. Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra. Let's begin with one man whose name silently lives in our everyday lives. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Born around 780 CE in Khwarizm, modern-day Uzbekistan, Al-Khwarizmi worked in Baghdad's House of Wisdom, where he wrote a groundbreaking book titled Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabalah. From that title, we get the word algebra. His methods of solving quadratic and linear equations laid the foundation of modern mathematics. When his works were translated into Latin in the 12th century, Europeans found the term Al-Khwarizmi difficult to pronounce, and thus came the word algorithm. Every time we use a smartphone, open Google, or rely on computer logic, we are, in a way, standing on the shoulders of Al-Khwarizmi, a man who lived over 1200 years ago. Ibn Sina, the Prince of Physicians. Next comes Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna. Born in 980 CE in Persia, Ibn Sina was a true genius. By age 16, he had mastered medicine. By age 18, he was already treating royal patients. His most famous work, Al-Qanun fi al-Tib, the Canon of Medicine, became the standard medical textbook in Europe for more than 600 years. He described the circulation of blood, the contagious nature of diseases, and the importance of mental health centuries before modern medicine caught up. His belief that the human mind and body were connected influenced not only physicians in the Islamic world, but also scholars in the Renaissance Europe. Universities in Italy and France used the canon as their primary medical reference until the 17th century. Al-Razi, the pioneer of clinical medicine. Before Ibn Sina, there was Al-Razi, a Persian physician born in 854 CE. Al-Razi was among the first to separate smallpox from measles, to use alcohol as a disinfectant, and to promote evidence-based medicine. He insisted that doctors should depend on observation and experimentation, not on blind tradition. In one of his writings, Al-Razi stated, The job of the physician is to cure through reason, not ritual. He ran hospitals in Baghdad, where he introduced what we now call medical wards, dividing patients by disease type and providing systematic care. In many ways, the modern hospital system was born from his ideas. Ibn al-Haytham, the father of optics. Now imagine a man sitting alone in a dark room in 10th century Cairo, studying how light passes through a small hole. That man was Ibn al-Haytham, Al-Hazan in Latin. He questioned old Greek theories that said the eye sends out rays to see objects. Instead, he proposed correctly that light enters the eye. His book, Kitab al-Manazir, the Book of Optics, is considered one of the greatest scientific works ever written. Ibn al-Haytham used experiments to test his theories, a method that would later become the foundation of the modern scientific method, centuries before Galileo or Newton. It was this experimental approach, not just observation or philosophy, that made the Islamic Golden Age truly revolutionary. Muslim scientists weren't content with simply knowing. They wanted to prove. Astronomy, mapping the heavens. The night sky was another area where Muslim scholars excelled. They built massive observatories in Baghdad, Damascus, and Samarkand to chart the movements of stars and planets with astonishing precision. Figures like al-Battani, al-Tusi, and al-Zarqali refined the calculations of Ptolemy and developed more accurate models of the solar system. Their star charts and instruments, such as the astrolabe, guided not only astronomers, but also travelers, sailors, and navigators. When European explorers like Christopher Columbus set sail centuries later, they relied on maps and tools born from the Muslim world. Mathematics and the birth of modern numbers. Another remarkable contribution was the development of Arabic numerals, which actually originated from India, but were spread and standardized by Muslim mathematicians. They replaced the clumsy Roman numeral system and introduced the concept of zero, which revolutionized calculation. Without this numerical system, modern banking, architecture, and computer science would be impossible. Chemistry, physics, and engineering. In chemistry, or as Muslims called it, alchemia, scientists like Jabir ibn Hayyan laid the groundwork for modern laboratory science. He developed methods of distillation, crystallization, and evaporation, creating what we now call laboratory equipment. In engineering, inventors like Al-Jazari designed intricate mechanical devices, including water clocks, fountains, and even early forms of robots. His illustrated book, The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, contained over 100 machines, centuries ahead of their time. Many of his designs later inspired engineers during the European Renaissance, including Leonardo da Vinci himself. A civilization of curiosity. The brilliance of these scholars was not just in their discoveries, but in their attitude towards knowledge. They believed that science and faith were not enemies, but allies in understanding the universe. Learning was seen as an act of devotion, and scholars were among the most respected members of society. Caliphs and rulers funded libraries, universities, and observatories because they understood that knowledge was power, not military power, but intellectual power. And so, for nearly 6 centuries, the Islamic world became the center of global civilization, a place where ideas flowed freely, and where a doctor from Persia could debate philosophy with a mathematician from Spain. It was an age when Muslims, Christians, Jews, and even pagans worked side by side in the pursuit of truth, united not by race or religion, but by the love of learning.
From Baghdad to Andalusia, the journey of knowledge to Europe. While Baghdad shined as the beating heart of learning in the East, another city, thousands of miles away, began to glow with the same light of knowledge. That city was Cordoba, in Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain. At a time when most of Europe was covered in darkness, when many kings and nobles couldn't read or write their own names, the Muslim cities of Spain were thriving, glittering with libraries, universities, and streetlights. Yes, streetlights, centuries before London or Paris. The miracle of Al-Andalus. When Muslim scholars and rulers established Al-Andalus in the 8th century, they didn't just bring armies, they brought culture, knowledge, and civilization. Cities like Cordoba, Granada, and Seville became some of the most advanced urban centers on Earth. Cordoba alone had 70 libraries, 900 public baths, 300 mosques, and paved roads, at a time when London and Paris were little more than muddy villages. Travelers from Christian Europe would arrive in shock. One famous European scholar wrote that, while Paris was dark and dirty, the lamps of Cordoba make the night look like day. A melting pot of civilizations. What made Al-Andalus special was its spirit of tolerance and coexistence. Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived and worked side by side, translating books, debating philosophy, and pushing the boundaries of science. This peaceful coexistence created a unique intellectual environment where ideas could flourish freely. It wasn't unusual to find a Muslim astronomer, a Jewish physician, and a Christian philosopher all studying in the same university. The language of learning was Arabic, but the goal was universal: to understand the mysteries of creation. The great libraries of Andalusia. Perhaps the most famous library of all was that of Caliph Al-Hakam II in Cordoba. He collected over 400,000 books, many of them handwritten copies of works from Baghdad, Cairo, and Damascus. For comparison, at that time, the largest library in all of Christian Europe had fewer than 1,000 books. Al-Hakam's library employed teams of scholars, translators, and copyists who worked day and night to preserve and expand the world's knowledge. It became a beacon of light, attracting scholars from across the Mediterranean. The transmission of knowledge. So how did all of this reach Europe? Through translation, the same process that had sparked the Golden Age in Baghdad centuries earlier. In the 12th century, a remarkable movement began in Toledo, Spain. After the city came under Christian rule, instead of destroying the Muslim libraries, the new rulers preserved them. European scholars like Gerard of Cremona, Michael Scott, and Adelard of Bath began translating Arabic works into Latin, the language of medieval Europe. Through these translations, the works of Al-Khwarizmi, Ibn Sina, Al-Razi, and Ibn al-Haytham were rediscovered in the West. Mathematics, medicine, astronomy, philosophy all flowed from Arabic into Latin, and from there into the universities of Europe. Seeds of the Renaissance. These translations didn't just educate, they transformed. They shattered centuries of intellectual stagnation in Europe and gave birth to what historians now call the European Renaissance. Great thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, Roger Bacon, and even Leonardo da Vinci built upon ideas that had been refined in the Muslim world. To put it simply, the Renaissance was not born in Italy. Its roots lay in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba, cities where Muslim scholars had kept the flame of knowledge alive while the rest of the world slept. As one historian beautifully said, Europe awoke to find that the treasures of the ancient world had been kept safe in Arabic. The role of Sicily and the Crusades. Another bridge between the Muslim and Christian worlds was the island of Sicily. For centuries, under Muslim rule, Sicily had absorbed Arabic science and art. When it came under Norman control, its new rulers preserved many Muslim traditions, hiring Arab architects, physicians, and translators. Even the Crusades, though brutal and tragic, became a channel for cultural exchange. European knights returning from the Middle East brought back not only spices and fabrics, but also new ideas in medicine, mathematics, and navigation. The compass, the astrolabe, and advanced surgical tools, all innovations that had developed in the Islamic world, now found their way into European hands. The legacy of Islamic Spain. By the 13th century, Al-Andalus had produced some of the greatest minds of the Middle Ages. Among them was Ibn Rushd, or Averroes, a philosopher whose works on Aristotle shaped the intellectual foundations of Europe. He argued that reason and faith are not enemies, but companions in the search for truth, an idea that deeply influenced European thought. At the same time, the Jewish philosopher Maimonides, who lived under Muslim rule in Spain and Egypt, drew inspiration from Muslim scholars to write his own philosophical masterpieces. Together, these thinkers created a bridge between East and West, a dialogue that carried the wisdom of the Muslim world into the heart of Europe. A civilization that taught the world. By the time Europe entered its Renaissance, the Islamic world had already experienced one of its own, a golden age of science, philosophy, and art that had transformed humanity's understanding of itself. The knowledge that passed from Muslim Spain to Europe became the foundation of modern science. From algebra to astronomy, from hospitals to universities, the fingerprints of the Islamic Golden Age are everywhere. Without the scholars of Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba, there would be no Galileo, no Newton, no modern medicine or mathematics as we know them. The light that shone from the east didn't fade, it traveled. It crossed deserts, mountains, and seas until it illuminated the entire world.
The decline and the legacy of the Golden Age. Every Golden Age eventually meets its twilight, and so did the magnificent civilization that once made the deserts bloom with wisdom, the night skies glow with science, and the world bow before its knowledge. For centuries, the Muslim world had led humanity, but slowly that light began to fade. The fall of Baghdad. The first great blow came in the year 1258 CE. The Mongols, led by Hulagu Khan, swept through Central Asia and descended upon Baghdad, the shining heart of the Islamic world. For 5 centuries, Baghdad had been the cradle of science, home to the House of Wisdom, a city of poets, physicians, astronomers, and dreamers. But in a single week of fire and blood, it was gone. The Mongols destroyed everything in their path. Rivers ran black with the ink of books thrown from libraries, and red with the blood of scholars who refused to abandon their city. It was said that so many manuscripts were tossed into the Tigris River that the water flowed dark for days. The destruction of Baghdad marked more than the fall of a city. It was the symbolic end of an era. The House of Wisdom was gone, and with it, a part of humanity's soul. Political fragmentation and invasions. Even before the Mongols, cracks had begun to appear. The once united Islamic Empire had broken into smaller, competing kingdoms. Instead of cooperation, there was conflict. Instead of scholars debating ideas, rulers were fighting over land and power. Invasions from the Crusaders, Mongols, and later European powers further weakened the Muslim world. Libraries were burned, universities closed, and the patronage of science, once the pride of caliphs, declined.
The flame that had burned so brightly in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba began to flicker. The rise of dogma over curiosity. But the decline wasn't just political, it was also intellectual. As the centuries passed, some societies began to lose their appetite for questioning and discovery. Rigid interpretations of religion replaced the open-minded spirit that had once defined Muslim scholarship. The balance between faith and reason, so beautifully maintained by scholars like Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi, began to tilt. Debate and experimentation were discouraged. Innovation, once celebrated, was viewed with suspicion. And as the Muslim world turned inward, Europe was awakening. Europe rises with borrowed light. The Renaissance, which began in Italy during the 14th century, drew heavily from the knowledge passed on by Muslim scholars. European scientists like Copernicus, Galileo, and Kepler built their discoveries upon the foundations laid by Al-Tusi, Ibn al-Shatir, and Al-Haytham. European medicine flourished thanks to the translations of Ibn Sina's canon and Al-Razi's treatises. Even modern chemistry traces its roots to Jabir ibn Hayyan's experiments. While the Muslim world faced political collapse, Europe took the wisdom it had inherited and expanded it, giving birth to the modern scientific revolution. It's a paradox of history. While one civilization declined, another rose, carrying with it the light that had once shone so brightly from the east. The forgotten heritage. Over time, much of this history was forgotten. Western historians often spoke of the Renaissance as if it appeared out of nowhere, ignoring the centuries of intellectual labor that made it possible. And in the Muslim world itself, many grew unaware of just how deep their scientific and cultural legacy truly was. The names of Ibn Sina, Al-Khwarizmi, Al-Haytham, and Averroes faded from memory, replaced by foreign heroes who had once studied their works. But history, as it turns out, never truly forgets. It only waits for us to remember. The legacy lives on. Today, the legacy of the Islamic Golden Age surrounds us, hidden in plain sight. Every time we use algebra, every time a doctor consults a medical text, every time a telescope peers into the night sky, a whisper of that forgotten age speaks to us. The methods of experimentation that define modern science began in the Muslim world. Hospitals, universities, and libraries, the cornerstones of modern civilization, were perfected there. Even the concept of seeking knowledge for all humanity, regardless of faith or race, was born in that era of openness and curiosity. Lessons for our time. The story of the Islamic Golden Age isn't just about the past. It's a lesson for the future. It teaches us that civilizations rise when they value learning, curiosity, and freedom of thought, and they decline when they stop asking questions. It reminds us that faith and reason are not enemies, they are allies in the search for truth. The Golden Age thrived because it welcomed knowledge from everywhere, Greek, Persian, Indian, Chinese, and transformed it into something universal. In a divided world today, that message is more powerful than ever. Imagine if humanity once again embraced that same openness, that same hunger for understanding that once made Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo the brightest cities on earth. When knowledge ruled the world. As the stars shimmered over Baghdad's night sky 1,000 years ago, a young student might have looked up and whispered a prayer, not for wealth or power, but for wisdom. That spirit, the belief that knowledge itself is sacred, built a civilization that shaped the modern world. And though empires fall and libraries burn, ideas live on. They travel across time and continents, whispering through generations.
They remind us that once, long ago, the world was ruled not by swords, but by scholars, not by greed, but by the quest for knowledge.